mental or fighting is as mental as it is physical.
Yeah.
And I mean, what would you say is like one of the biggest mental battles you've had to overcome inside or outside the cage?
Um, Man, that's tough. I would say, let's start with this. Inside the cage, I think a lot of people think that as a fighter, you're just, you have resilience and you're going to just do whatever it takes to win. And if you've trained that, if you've built that, if you have that mentality, yes, most of the time you will. However, you're always going to be faced with that question of, do I want to quit? Do I want to get out of here? No matter how mentally tough you are, no matter how strong you are, no matter how good you are, if you're getting blasted in the face, if you're, flash knocked out, if you're in a bad spot, you have cuts, whatever it is, there will be points where your brain is like, hey man, just let it go. Like all you got to do is stop moving and the ref's going to step in and stop it. And the biggest thing is you have to make the choice. You have to make the choice to keep moving forward, to keep going through what you're going through, because you know that if you go through it long enough, if you push hard enough, there's always going to be a way that you can, like a path where you can find a way to win, right? So I think ultimately it's just taking that step back and knowing like I'm going to be faced with this question if I want to quit, and I have to make the choice that I want to keep going. And even if you might not see this positive outcome that the win or whatever it is, you have to remember that I can find a way to get there. Even if you're maybe not better than the guy, even if you're, broken. Like there was a time, it was my second professional fight. Went out, it was in Indiana. It was main event, and I went out and I won the first round. Everything was going great. Second round comes, and he took me down off the cage, landed, and I fractured 3 of my ribs, and I could feel it immediately. And then, I managed to get up, and he took me down again in that same shoulder in the same spot. So I have 3 fractured ribs. My cartilage was torn completely off the bone. Basically, the right side of my rib cage isn't connected to my sternum anymore. And because of that, I was struggling. Because of that, I was on the bottom. I'm getting elbowed in the face. Like I had massive cuts. I ended up getting massive gash behind my ear, over my eye. I'm, bleeding profusely. I can't, like, I'm struggling to get up and all that. And that was one of those moments that I was telling you about where it's like, hey, man, all you got to do is cover up and the ref will save you. But you have to make a choice. Like, okay, I don't want that. Like, I gotta, maybe I could have gotten out of there with less injuries. But for me, it was like, I'd rather not be able to get up and keep moving than just to quit. And, you find a way. You find a way. I managed to find a way. I even threw up an armbar at the end of the second round. I couldn't extend it because my ribs were so messed up. But I made it out of the round. And like in between rounds, there's pictures. You'll see my face is completely bloody, like everything. And it was like, okay, I am absolutely battered. I lost that round, and I don't have all of the tools to try to really like go out there and execute a game plan that I wanted to execute in the first place. And I ended up shooting a desperate takedown and getting choked and having to tap. But the point of that story is to say that when you're in those moments, you always have a choice whether you want to keep going or you want to quit, and that's up to you. And the more times that you choose to keep going, the more you're reinforcing that choice in your own mind, the easier that it's going to be in the future to make that choice again, right? So whatever it is, if you allow yourself, when you face something uncomfortable, you face something difficult, and you're like, okay, I'm out, I'm going to stop here. You're reinforcing that. You're probably going to stop even sooner next time. But if you, on the other end of things, if you make the choice to keep going, then it'll be easier and easier to make that choice in the future. And you're going to get further and further, be able to adjust and adapt to being uncomfortable in those difficult situations. And before you know it, you're starting to build that resilience that you want. And it just becomes of comes through the habit of making the choice to keep going when you don't want to.
That's awesome. You're sitting there with 3 broken ribs. Is it the adrenaline that's flowing that's kind of keeping that pain away, or what? Are you just putting it out of your mind, or you're like, fuck it, this is just going to hurt for a while and I'm just going to do what I can?
Adrenaline is a really powerful thing. It's a really powerful thing. No, you can absolutely feel it. I think it's really just like the adrenaline makes a big difference, but the decision of, okay, let's put it this way. I think the shame of giving up on myself is going to be more painful than those broken ribs.
Gotcha.
That's what it comes down to. And I didn't want to give up on myself. I knew that I can either deal with the pain of giving up, or I can deal with the pain of these broken ribs and keep trying. That's what it came down to.
The broken ribs is temporary.
I mean, kind of temporary. The broken ribs heal.
Right.
The cartilage, like these ribs up here, these top 2 ribs, they connect through cartilage to your sternum. Well, that cartilage is torn completely off the bone. So these 2 ribs are no longer connected to my sternum, and they're never going to heal. That cartilage is never going to regrow.
Can you just like feel your ribs?
Yeah, I could. You could feel it right now if you wanted to.
Good.
Yeah,
we'll pass.
I trust you.
And I like if I lay on my stomach, I can feel them like on whatever surface it is. And then that's just the way that it is. And eventually you lose, those nerve endings kind of die and you lose the pain that comes with it. So it's just a weird feeling now. It's not a painful feeling.
Yeah.
But it's just structural damage that never.
Then they can't go and do surgery on that, or?
Oh man, that's a big thing. That's actually one of the reasons why I don't really go to see sports doctors anymore. Because I saw
we've talked about this.
I saw about 13 different doctors, and they went, they'd refer me to a trauma surgeon, refer me back to an orthopedic, whatever. One guy said he could go in there and put a steel plate in there, whatever. And I was like, I probably don't want that. And long story short, every single one of them told me not to fight again. So ultimately, I said, okay, see you, doc. I'm probably not going to come back and see you again. And then I spent several years working with Dr. Ian McIntosh at the Health and Performance Center. He's a chiropractor, but more of like a holistic, type of approach with, strength and conditioning and that kind of stuff. I worked with Sarah and Steve at the fitness dojo to really kind of reposition my body to, and build some muscle mass around that area to keep it a little bit safer. And just doing a lot of like things naturally to try to help it, because ultimately I knew that it wasn't going to really like fix itself, but I can kind of work around it and do things that would be beneficial. It took a lot of learning, and that's really what got me into a lot of the, deep into the strength and conditioning, the nutrition, that kind of stuff. And, I don't have any formal education in that, but I do have a science background, and I've probably read more literature on those topics than a lot of people, just because I was dealing with something that I needed to fix and nobody could give me the answers. So I was like, okay, I might as well try to fix this myself. And then I teamed up with some of those people I mentioned, and we've made major progress, and it really doesn't, bother me or give me any issues anymore. Unless I get hit directly on it, then, that's a problem. But overall,
Trying to avoid that anyway.
Yeah, trying to avoid that anyway.
Yeah.